This afternoon, I want you to go to Psalm 73. Psalm 73. There is a question asked, why do wicked people prosper and sometimes the people who do right suffer? And guess what? The question is not answered. Because we're supposed to walk by faith. And so really the question is not answered. But we all see that. And we've all wondered, well, why are they doing so good and why am I not? By the way, there are three reasons, and that's not a good position to get into, to question God. Well, how come they're doing so good and how I'm doing so bad? There are three reasons for that, that causes that. Number one is getting your eyes off God. Number two, setting your eyes on man's ways. Man's ways will never be God's standard. And then, like it was with Asa in Psalm 73, a temporary lapse of faith. Psalm 73, now I'm going to walk you through some introductory so you'll kind of get how the psalm works. There are two ways to look at it. One is this. In the first 12 verses, you have the ways and the lifestyle of the wicked. Then verse 13 and 16, you have Asa's perplexity about that. Then in verse 13, you have his correction. And you'll appreciate that verse when I get there. Then from verse 18 on, you have God's assessment of the wicked. What you get here is you get man, as a Christian looks at the wicked of this world and what his assessment of that is, and then later on you get God's look at the same people and what God's assessment is of those people, and it's totally different. And one of the great mistakes that we're bound to make if we're not careful is we look at life from birth to death. God looks at life from birth from now on. Okay? There's another way to look at this psalm, and it's divided in two ways. Again, number one, into the first 14 verses, the perplexity over the prosperity of bad people. By the way, there's a human reason why a lot of times wicked people prosper. They have no qualms about how they get their riches. Verse 1 through 5 is their prosperity. Consequence of that in verse 6 to 9 is their pride and then their presumption. And then the second way the psalm divides is the proclamation of the justice of God. We get God's perspective of the wicked in verse 15 to 17, God's judgment in verse 18 to 20, and then his guidance of the believer. So basically the first 12 verses is the assessment of man for the ungodly. And it begins with, truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. So that wouldn't just be Israel, that would be all people whose heart is for the Lord. But then I want you to notice verse 2. But, as for me, my feet almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. Feet almost gone and well nigh slipped does not mean the physical walk. means life as a whole. Asa was inundated with the challenges of life, and he looked at the godless, and they were not in the same shape, and it troubled him. As a matter of fact, and I think if we'll be honest, sometimes we all have this problem in verse 3. I was envious of the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. You would be a very spiritual person if you've never had that problem. I was envious of the foolish. By the way, the foolish in the Bible always means people who order their life without God. That's what foolish in the Bible means. When I saw the prosperity of the wicked. I think it's fair to say, and surely there wouldn't be a lot of argument about this, I don't mean absolutely, but relatively speaking, the business climate in our nation has become very corrupt, greedy. Our business people are no longer satisfied to make a little profit so they can take care of their families. Now they go for the throat. And then they brag about how much they stuck it to us. I'm old enough to remember when the business climate in America wasn't that way. It was kind of fair, but that's long gone. And then here's the description. For there are no bands in their death. Their old life is very comfortable and well cared for. Their strength is firm. They seem to even maintain their health in old age. Of course, they've got the money to fly the world wherever the best care is, and we can't do that. They're not in trouble as other men. Well, most of the times because they buy their way out of trouble. Neither are they plagued like other men. They have the wherewithal to enjoy life. And so there's some consequences of the wealthy. Therefore pride compasses them about as a chain. Seems like the more people have, the more prideful they become. Violence covereth them as a garment. In other words, usually unbelievers don't have any scruples about what they have to do to make whatever they want to make. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. That statement, their eyes stand out with fatness, means they got more than they know what to do with. They have more than heart could wish. Anything the heart desires, they just get it. But look, they're corrupt. They speak wickedly concerning oppression. They don't mind at all. And America's gotten, business climate in America's gotten very bad about this. Oppressing the poor to increase their own riches. You can't deny that that's not going on. I mean, you'd have to be living under a rock to think that's not going on today. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens. Usually these are people, there are rich Christians doing right with their money. But usually the very wealthy are very godless. Their position is we don't need God. Their tongue walketh through the earth. They have no respect for things that ought to be respected. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are run out to them. Their children follow in their steps. And they say, how doth God know? And is the knowledge of the Most High? They're not Christians. They don't care about God. They don't care about principles. They don't care about people. Life is all about them. And so Asa assesses, behold, these are the ungodly. Now remember, I did say there are some very good, wealthy believers. But I can also honestly say they are in a vast minority. Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. So, first of all, you have here a description of really much of humanity. We're more aware of that because we're living probably in the richest nation that's ever been on earth. By the way, we're not anymore. You do understand that. A dollar bill used to be a dollar. Now a dollar bill's got a word on there. Have you ever studied it? It says note. It's borrowed money. We don't have the gold behind. How many trillions are we in debt now? How many? It's and the reality is they keep in Washington. They keep talking about got to get this budget in line to pay the debt. The truth of the matter is, it's an impossible debt to pay. It'll never be paid. They have no intentions of paying that debt. They have every intention of wiping the slate clean one day and going to a world money. That's the agenda. Every power, nation, government, kingdom, etc., that's ever been since God made this earth eventually started spending more than they had, increased terribly the burden of taxation, and then finally, if the nation survived, just cleared the deck and started over. That is the reality of human government. So Asa looks at this situation kind of like we look at our world today. And here's the conclusion he comes to. He looks at this unjust gain and godless people and he looks at all that and he has a temporary lapse of faith and he says, verse 13, verily I've cleansed my heart in vain and washed my innocency. He says, what is the point of me trying to live a godly life? I'm trying to live a godly life and look how I'm struggling, and there's all these people out there who don't care about a thing, and look how well they're doing. For all the day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning. That's because, you see, we have a different Father than they do. The devil is their father who prods them on in their wickedness. We have a Father who loves us and keeps us in check. Look what happens to physically now. Look at children who are kept in check and raised right by their parents. And look at so much of our modern children who have been taught the modern way, and there's no discipline, and they're spoiled and they do whatever they want. See how that turns out. Well, God's a good Father, and He's not going to let us go that way. For all the day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning. If I say I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. What he's saying is, I don't understand it, and I don't care what I say, I can't figure it out. And then he admits in verse 16, when I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. He got very depressed, very negative about the situation. Now verse 17 is the turning point. Until I felt bad, I didn't like what I see, I was depressed, etc., 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 until I went into the sanctuary of God. Of course, he had a literal sanctuary. Our sanctuary is spiritual. Your sanctuary is when you get your nose in the Bible and pray. Until I went into the sanctuary of God. Let me tell you something. One day with the Lord and his love and his peace is better than a lifetime without God. I don't care how rich you get. Do you really believe that? I hope you do. Last night I went to an event, and there was music that was just deafening, and so for a little while I got me a glass of tea and I walked around. And these are, by and large, were well-to-do people. I walked around and I never saw so many $75,000 pickups in all my life. And their home was, and driving home I said, you know, at our age, hopefully you get a little sense before you push 80, and we're pushing, I'm pushing. I told her, I said, she agreed, I said, you know, our little home is paid for, and it's all ours, there are no debts, and we don't have any problems. And our used little vehicles, well, we're happy. We're at peace. And we know God loves us. And all the money in the world can't buy that. By the way, we don't begrudge anybody that. But God has shown us a much better way, for which we praise him and thank him. So Asa comes to himself. Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then understood I their end. Now he sees their situation through God's eyes. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. That glorious lifestyle can end in a second. Thou castest them down into destruction. What's waiting for them after this life? How are they brought into desolation? As in a moment, they're utterly consumed with terrors. As a dream when one awaketh, so, O Lord, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image. Let me put all that in one sentence. Their glorious life on earth, if they die without Christ, they'll crash from that glorious life into an eternal abyss of torment forever and ever and ever. It will end in a thud. Would we really trade 70 years of the best life on earth possible for an eternity without God? That is not a good choice. So then, Asa gets under some conviction here. Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins. So foolish was I, and ignorant I was as a beast before thee. He bowed before God and said, God, I have it all wrong. It isn't like it looks. Nevertheless, I am continually with thee, and thou hast hold me by my right hand. Peace with God, fellowship with God, the leadership of the Lord. There is not enough money, gold and silver, and diamonds and pearls on planet Earth. Then that's better than the fellowship that we have with the Lord. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. Yes, poor people don't get treated very good in this life. I know that. You know that. We've all experienced it. But God takes care of us. And the tables will be turned. In eternity, eternity, the rich become poor and the poor become rich. The tormented become satisfied and the satisfied become tormented. And then he realizes and he gives a testimony. Whom have I in heaven but thee, and there's none upon earth that I desire beside thee. He comes to his senses. He says, man, I don't want that. I want you, Lord. And he understands, my flesh and my heart faileth. But God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. God is better than a gazillion dollars and everything that it'll buy. And let me pause here to again make the statement so that nobody gets the wrong idea. I'm not against having stuff. I really am not, unless it takes you away from God. Unless it becomes your God. But if you've worked all your life and God has allowed you to be comfortable, be comfortable. But don't let it take you away from God. Finally, Asa realizes God and what he does is better than what the world and money does. And he comes to the conclusion, for lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all them that go a-whoring from thee. What he really did, he got to looking at life, not just from the day of birth to the day of death. He got to looking at the way God looks at it. You became a living soul, and you will live forever. And this life is just preparatory for the next life, which will last forever, forever, forever. And so he concludes, it's good for me to draw near to God. Amen. I've put my trust in the Lord God. Amen. And then we have a responsibility that I may declare all thy works. Now, did you notice what I said in the introduction? Why do the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer? That's never answered. Because we're supposed to walk by faith. It is an expose that we need to be careful about getting our eyes off the Lord, and need to be careful not to keep our eyes on man too much. But folks, when we have the Lord, we have everything. And whether he grants us in life much or little, we understand it really doesn't matter. Because it's only for a little while anyway, and then we have an eternity with Christ.